What did Boston Bruins general manager Don Sweeney have to say about moves made earlier this week, the draft, and upcoming free agency? Let's dig into it on a brand new episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Friday, June 28th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we are breaking down Don Sweeney's pre-draft comments after having jumped into the first round via the Linus Ullmark trade with the Ottawa Senators earlier this week. Free agency set for Monday as well, and Sweeney certainly seems to have some players on his radar that he would like to add. Before we get into that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey thoughts at Ian C. McLaren. All right, to begin though, some breaking news surrounding two prominent members of the Boston Bruins. The 6 initial players for each of the 4 teams participating in the Four Nations Challenge face-off next February have been announced, and among those initially chosen for the tournament were Bruins forward Brad Marchand, who will represent Team Canada, and Bruins defenseman Charlie McAvoy, who will rep the red, white, and blue. Marchand won gold with Team Canada at the World Juniors back in 2007 and 2008. He represented Canada at the 2016 World Championship and the World Cup of Hockey, winning gold in both tournaments. He scored the World Cup clinching goal in that famous jumping celebration shot that was taken in Toronto. As for McAvoy, he represented the U.S. at the 2014 World Under-17 Hockey Challenge, the 2015 Under-18 World Championships, bringing home gold in both tournaments. He played at the 2016 and 17 World Juniors, winning bronze and gold, respectively. And he also played at the 2018 World Championship, where he won the bronze. So, not a shock that either player will be representing their countries at the Four Nation face-off. Perhaps a bit of a surprise that Marchand was one of the first picked for Team Canada, a loaded roster to be sure. And he, is a bit on the older side of things. McAvoy, of course, I expected to be included as well. Maybe a bit of a surprise that he's one of the first 6, but the fact that some of the games are played in Boston maybe played a role in that as well. So big congrats to both those guys. Still, very unfortunate that David Pastrnak will not be participating in that tournament, despite the fact Czechia just won the World Championship and games will be played in Boston. Tonight, though, we focus on the NHL draft, and Don Sweeney is in Vegas. He's talking about getting back into the first round with the 25th pick that originally belonged to this team. It went to Detroit, to Ottawa, now back to Boston. And Sweeney, however, not 100% committed to using this pick. It's a very real possibility they could use it in a trade for a player, or they could trade back to accumulate more picks. Their second pick this year isn't until the 4th round. Do they maybe trade back for a couple of second rounders, a second and third? It will be a challenge to trade up higher in the first round. But at the end of the day, if there's no deal on the table, there's always a desire to add more young talent to the system, because they haven't had a first-round pick in 4 of the last 6 drafts. Johnny Beecher, Fabian Lysell. That's it for the past handful of years. If they do indeed make the pick, he said they're going to try to find the best player they possibly can. There's always an eye towards positional needs, but it's a dangerous prospect to go into the draft thinking you're just targeting one particular position. That can be an ill-fated strategy. You can make some mistakes. The Bruins have done that in the past. They're 18-year-old kids with a lot of development to be done. They want to find the best player that fits some of the things that their prospect pool may lack, which is what you want to hear. So whether it's Jet Luchenko, Sacha Bouvert, Cole Baudouin, Dean Letourneau, a defenseman, somebody off the board, the Bruins, if no sufficient deal arises, could and should be making that pick and adding a pretty decent young player. Now, it came up yesterday that perhaps there's an opportunity to deal with the Winnipeg Jets. Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg News reported that the Bruins have had ongoing talks with the Jets about Rutger McGroarty. He's a 14th overall pick from 2022, expecting to be traded after the two sides, not really seeing eye to eye. And perhaps it would be prudent for the Bruins to trade the 25th overall pick this year for a guy who's more NHL ready. He was 9th in the NCAA in scoring as a sophomore at the University of Michigan this past season, 52 points, plays with some grit and can put up some points. So he would be a fantastic addition to the Bruins and a guy who, if you draft a guy tonight, he might be 2-3 years away. If you add McGroarty, there's a possibility that he could challenge for a roster spot in the fall. So that's certainly a possibility. Also a possibility that they just take the pick and roll with it and get the best possible player. I'm crossing my fingers that it will be Jet Luchenko, but a lot of the mock drafts that I'm seeing suggest that he could be gone by that time. So that's the first thing we learned from Don Sweeney. We'll talk about Jake DeBrusk likely being gone, who they could be targeting, and what the plan is with Joonas Korpisalo straight from Sweeney's mouth. We'll discuss all that here as the podcast continues. Passion, drive, and patience, what keeps your ride alive in 2024 is the same formula for winning championships as it is at eBay Motors. They have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. They have over 122 million parts for your ride, and you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. Turn your car into an MVP and bring home huge wins. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply, and the eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only to U.S. customers. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. While you're on YouTube, check out Locked On Sports Today. All the latest news, opinions, and analysis from across the Locked On Sports universe. Reactions to the NBA draft, to the NHL draft up there tonight. It's all free and available 24/7 on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today, and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, what else did we learn from Don Sweeney on Thursday? Well, it's a safe bet that all unrestricted free agents currently on the roster will hit the open market and not be re-signed by Monday. That includes 3 defensemen: Matt Grzelcyk, Derek Forbort, Kevin Shattenkirk. That includes James Van Riemsdyk, Pat Maroon, Danton Heinen, and Jake DeBrusk. And Don Sweeney flat out said, no updates, no progress made, and he expects Jake to test the market. That remains consistent with what they've been saying about the negotiations with Jake. There haven't been any productive talks in quite some time. And at the end of the day, it's his prerogative to see what July 1st brings. There seems to be this line in the sand that has been drawn. The Bruins don't want to budge from whatever term and valuation they're offering. DeBrusk clearly believes he deserves more, especially in terms of valuation. He can't get more term from any other team. Can get 8 years from the Bruins, 7 on the open market. And it clearly appears as though Jake DeBrusk will be playing elsewhere unless he circles the wagons in free agency, doesn't really get any serious nibbles, or doesn't see that his value is greater on the open market than it is by the Bruins standards. Maybe they can circle back, but it's really unfortunate. I really would have liked Jake DeBrusk to remain in black and gold, but I mean, at this point, it seems as though he's intent. I wouldn't be shocked if he signs with either the Calgary Flames or the Edmonton Oilers. Being an Alberta boy, his family's all out there, his partner's out there. It seems like he wants to go home. And if the Flames, who just cleared up some cap space by trading Andrew Mangiapane to the Washington Capitals, if they're interested, he could bite. I'm sure his preference would be Edmonton. We'll see if they are willing to bite on him. But yeah, Jake DeBrusk, the Boston Bruins, really looks as though there is a parting of the ways coming there. When it comes to Heinen, Sweeney did say he has talked to his camp and one other player's agents. Unclear if those talks could lead to a deal coming together before Monday. Sweeney said, quote, "I'm having conversations with Heinen and another one of our guys, whether that's Maroon, Van Riemsdyk, I'm not quite sure." He said they kind of know what our position is, each and every one of those individuals and the representation. And we'll see what happens there. I would love to have Danton Heinen back. Perhaps his performance last year priced him out of Boston. They do have cap space, but it's kind of limited because Jeremy Swayman needs to sign a contract, as does, yet unknown unrestricted free agents. And Sweeney did say his priority, apart from re-signing Jeremy Swayman, is adding down the middle. We'd like to deepen the middle of the ice, he said. That's where they're focused, and those are the guys that they're going to approach. Hopefully, he said, the pitch is right at the right time. They can add a player of that nature. They're going to continue to look at strengthening the back end and complementing the group they have there. I've been talking about it's kind of thin, the group right now, with those three guys leaving. Forbort, Grzelcyk, Shattenkirk, Witherspoon, Lohrei are the only guys outside the top four that are signed long-term. Lindholm, McAvoy, Carlo, who's the other? You have Lohrei, Witherspoon, and there's one other guy that is signed at the moment. Let me just bring up Cap Friendly while we still can and remind myself of who that is. But yeah, they definitely need to add down the middle. And they definitely need to add on the blue line. So those will be two areas. What you're not hearing there is on the wing. And if you have DeBrusk leaving, if you have, Andrew Peeke is the other guy that is signed. If you have DeBrusk leaving, you already have a hole on the wings. You already needed a top six winger. Danton Heinen had been playing there in the playoffs. So whether they sign a center and push Zaka to the wing so that you have a winger there, try to add another guy on the cheap. I mean, it really seems as though it's going to be Elias Lindholm, who's brought in. Steven Stamkos would be an ideal target as well. It appears as though he might be heading out of Tampa as they are prioritizing re-signing Victor Hedman, who can be eligible on July 1st. There are other centers on the market or versatile forwards: Matt Duchene, Chandler Stevenson, Sean Monahan, Max Domi, Alex Wenberg. Ideally, the Bruins would love to address both center and wing and defense and sign Swayman, but we're probably looking at 3 of those 4 at this point. They have about $24 million in cap space, 7 to 8 for Swayman, 7 to 8 for a center, so that leaves $8 or $9 million. They could take a run at a top player or split it up among a middle 6 winger, middle 6 defenseman, bottom 4 defenseman. Perhaps they are going to look at some defensemen on the cheap, like Oliver Ekman-Larsson or Alex Carrier. Who knows? One guy who could make the jump up and perhaps fill that winger spot is Fabian Lysell. And Don Sweeney did say on Thursday that they were excited about his trajectory and the year that was trending upwards, but he was injured, hurt his shoulder, had a concussion. He did come back and play in the playoffs, but didn't feel 100% comfortable. If that hadn't happened, he would have gotten an opportunity like some other guys did because he had been playing that well. Now he's going to hit the reset button, have a really good offseason, and come back with the reality that if he plays well in training camp, he could very well compete for a spot on the opening night roster. His team game needs to improve, as Jim Montgomery would describe it. But the skill is all world there, and he's a risk-reward guy, high-skill player. They're going to have to go through some bumps with him at the NHL level, but it could be worth it if you can add a guy of his skill level to the NHL roster still on his entry-level deal. There was a knock on him last season about buying in and playing a team game, but Sweeney said Lysell made real strides in that department in the second half while producing offensively. They're going to have to incorporate some young, cheap players into the mix. Matt Poitras, Johnny Beecher, Mason Lohrei, Justin Brazeau, and we'll see what other holes they could fill in free agency. But center, Swayman, and then wings, defense, that's kind of the priority, or defense, wings, and they're going to go from there. I did forget to mention when talking about Brad Marchand is that Sweeney did say that he did have an unspecified cleanup procedure. So some sort of surgery. He's going to be fine. There was a question about David Pastrnak. There was a report that he had a hip issue at the World Championship, but no mention of any surgery there. Everybody should be good and healthy for training camp. So that's the plan for tonight, Friday night at the NHL draft. That's what they're looking at for Monday. Coming up as the podcast continues, we're going to talk about the decision to take on Joonas Korpisalo and what the plan is on that front in net for the Boston Bruins. NHL and NBA finals are over. We are in the dog days of summer with few options out there. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop, but we're getting fewer games these days, and the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Just head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Now, Don Sweeney didn't flat out say it, but it really appears as though the only way they were going to get back into the first round via the Ottawa Senators was to take on Joonas Korpisalo in the Linus Ullmark trade. He's coming off a pretty poor season with the Senators, has 4 years left on his deal. The Bruins are on the hook for $3 million per season over the next 4 years. But ultimately, Don Sweeney, along with Mark Kastelic, taking on Korpisalo and Kastelic, it was worth clearing up $1 million plus in cap space and getting that first round pick. And the official party line at the moment is they believe they can get Korpisalo's game on track and have him be a valuable backup to Jeremy Swayman. And if anybody can do it, it's goalie coach Bob Essensa, who's been good in getting the most out of just about every player who has suited up in net for the Bruins for the past couple of decades. Sweeney said Korpisalo has been a high-level goaltender, and Bob did a lot of work with him when he played his best hockey in LA. And their hope is that they can translate it into their hockey club. They feel comfortable with him as a compliment and the guy that can push because they feel there's more ground for him to get back to when he played his best hockey. They did that in past with Yaroslav Halak. It's a projection, of course. It's maybe wishful thinking, but they feel comfortable in terms of stylistically, the competitiveness in the goaltender, and Bob doing his work on how he projects into the lineup. Sweeney did go out of his way to mention Brandon Bussey. Door's not closed on him. Doesn't want anyone to lose sight of Brandon in the sense that he's paid his dues. He wants his opportunity in the NHL just like anybody else. And if he beats out Korpisalo, they'll give him that opportunity. He does require waivers to be sent to Providence. It's part of the cycle all players go through when they start to mature and an opportunity presents. Then they'll have to make a tough decision. So there will be some competition in training camp. It's not a fait accompli that it is Swayman and Korpisalo, but based on the salary and what it would cost to bury him in the minors, barring a flip, it'll be Swayman and Korpisalo. Again, Sweeney made it clear that getting Swayman locked up to an extension remains the priority. Hopes to get it done before free agency begins on Monday, which would be ideal, so they know exactly what they're working with. But there's no hard deadline there. He did rule out, flat out, the possibility of trading Swayman, and he has no plans to go back to arbitration with him, as that did take a bit of a personal toll on DeBrusk, on Jeremy Swayman last summer. So that's where we stand right now with respect to the Boston Bruins. They have the 25th overall pick. They will use it unless something else pops up. If there's a deal to be made, if they can flip it to add McGroarty or improve the roster, they're open to that. But if they do use it, it will be for the best possible player. And the priorities in free agency are down the middle. Defense, perhaps on the wings as well, although they could add to the wing by adding a center, by moving Zacha or Geeky or maybe even Patra to the wing. And then finally, Jake DeBrusk, likely gone. Heinen, maybe the best possibility of coming back. A couple buyouts being announced today. Ryan Suter in Dallas, Cam Atkinson in Philadelphia, which is pretty big. Jeff Skinner is apparently going to be bought out as well. That could be a sneaky reclamation project for the Bruins, although he would be in pretty high demand. He's still pretty good, but not quite the $9 million player that he's being paid to be. So that's the absolute latest on the Bruins as I record here around noon on Friday. When the Bruins make a selection, I will jump on and put something up on the YouTube channel at the very least for that. So please do subscribe so that you never miss a thing. If there's breaking news with respect to our Bruins, I'll be all over it on the YouTube page and coming back with a recap podcast. So subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube to keep up on all the latest with the Boston Bruins, because this is the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. Enjoy the weekend. Should be a crazy one around the hockey world.